Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT-05, and BT-05 adds a lot of new and powerful tools to upgrade some current and existing decks, and one of those decks that is being upgraded is going to be Imperialdramon. So Imperialdramon in blue is still looking to be a very powerful and very popular deck, and Battle of Omni adds a couple of new meaningful tools to just continue pushing the deck forward and keeping it meta relevant, which is always a good thing. So, going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running one copy of DemiVeemon. This is the 5th Digitama of the deck, so it could really be anything you feel like you want it to be, but I still like DemiVeemon just because it has the nice inheritable ability of during your turn, once per turn, when this Digimon becomes unsuspended during your main phase, then you get to gain 1000 DP. So blue isn't necessarily known for having good DP boosting, so we could use DemiVeemon to increase the DP of our Imperialdramon Dragon Mode in case we need to swing into the opponent's Digimon to try to get it off the field. And that's why I really like DemiVeemon, but again, this is the 5th Digitama slot and it could be really anything you want it to be. But as far as the main Digitama of the deck, it's still going to be 4 copies of DemiVeemon. So this is the BT-03 version of DemiVeemon, and this DemiVeemon has the very nice inheritable ability of when attacking once per turn, if this Digimon has jamming, then you get to draw 1 card. So drawing cards is really nice just because it helps the deck's overall consistency, so that way you could see the cards that you want or need to see more often than not. So this being a really good draw engine just means that we should be running it. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Elecmon. So Elecmon is still just a really decent Digimon for the deck to be utilizing, just because it has some very efficient stat lines, because it hard plays for 2, has an Evo cost of 0, and has 3000 DP, making it just a very good card to run. Next up, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Veemon. So this is the BT-03 version of Veemon, and this Veemon is in the deck just because he has the native ability of jamming. So having a rookie with jamming is really, really powerful, not only for the DemiVeemon, so that way you could start drawing cards really early on, but it allows you to start aggressing really early on, and because he has jamming, he's going to be living the opponent's security Digimon. So he's just a really good card to act as some early game aggression, on top of which he does have some overall synergy and combo play with some of the other cards in the deck, just making him very powerful of a card to be utilizing still. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Strabimon. So Strabimon is in here just because we are playing a little bit of hybrid tech, and Strabimon is helping with that hybrid tech overall, just because he has this nice on-play ability where you get to reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, and then add 1 Digimon with hybrid in its form, and or 1 blue Tamer card from among them and put it into your hand, otherwise the rest go to the bottom. So, like I said, we are playing a couple of hybrids, and we want to try to see our hybrids and tamers as often as we possibly can, so Strabimon is really nice for trying to dig those out. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Syakomon. So Syakomon is one of the new cards in BT-05, and this card is a pretty interesting card considering it has the unique ability where during the opponent's turn, your opponent can't reduce the Digivolution costs of their cards. So this is just really good just because there are a couple of strategies and decks that want to reduce their Digivolution cost, so Syakomon is a good card to try to help counteract those and to give you a leg up in those matchups. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Gorillamon. So Gorillamon is still just a very fantastic card for the deck to be running, just because he has a very low Evo cost of 1, making him very easy to Digivolve into and off of, so that way you could try to get to your higher stages that much more faster and efficiently. And then on top of that, he also has 6000 DP, which DP is starting to matter a little bit more and more, so we definitely want to run cards with slightly higher DP, so that way they're going to be a little bit harder for the opponent to be removing. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of ExVeemon. So ExVeemon is another really powerful card that has lots of synergy and interaction with the deck. So what he's doing is he has a nice when Digivolving ability where you get to unsuspend one of your level 4 or lower Digimon. So this basically just in the early to mid games can get you an extra swing, and in the late games it also can get you an extra swing, and the extra swing potential is what we're trying to gain out of the card to try to help close out the game as fast as we possibly can. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Lobomon. So Lobomon is the main hybrid that we're going to be trying to look for, just because he has this very nice, powerful ability where you may Digivolve this card from your hand on top of one of your blue Tamers, as if that Tamer was a level 3 Digimon. So this is just an extra attack out of nowhere, and that extra attack out of nowhere could take the opponent by surprise and make it very hard for them to try to deal with all of the attacks, because they have to deal with all of your initial attacks and then worry about any extra attacks that are coming from your champions or your megas. So Lobomon is just an absolutely fantastic pressure card to just try to help close out the game with. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Coelamon. So Coelamon is going to be acting as the deck's dedicated blocker, which having a blocker is still really important, just because it could help stave off some aggression. But on top of the fact that it is going to be the deck's dedicated blocker, it does have an evo cost of 1, so it's very tempo efficient, but the downside is it does have 5000 DP, making it a little bit more susceptible to removal, but the tempo is worth that trade-off. But if you really feel like you still want to run Gorillamon just as the deck's dedicated blocker, because it does have 6000 DP, then by all means do so. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Paildramon. So Paildramon is still just a mandatory card you have to be running in all Imperialdramon decks, just because of what this card is doing. So his first ability that he has native to himself is going to be jamming. So Imperialdramon is a jamming focused deck, so it only makes sense that he has jamming to try to aggress onto the opponent's security as safely as he possibly could. And then on top of that, he also has the nice inheritable ability that he gives, which is a when attacking ability. Once per turn, if this Digimon has Imperialdramon in its name, then you get to unsuspend it. So this is just what gives Imperialdramon a whole bunch of extra aggression, just because Paildramon could be utilized to give Imperialdramon some extra attacks. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Dinobeemon. So Dinobeemon is another mandatory card that we have to be running in borderline all Imperialdramon decks, just because of his interactions with Imperialdramon, which we'll get to in a moment. But Dinobeemon is also a pretty decent Digimon in his own right, considering he has the piercing ability natively to him. So this way he is really good against the opponent if they're trying to block him out. Then the piercing ability is going to allow us to do damage anyway. And then on top of that, he also has jamming. So not only is he going to safely attack it into the opponent's security, he's going to almost guarantee that the damage is going to happen just because of the piercing ability, as long as they don't have a blocker that's equal to or greater power than him. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Imperialdramon Dragon Mode. So Imperialdramon Dragon Mode, the reason why our ultimates are the way they are is because Imperialdramon Dragon Mode's ability, where you could Digivolve them off of a Paildramon or Dinobeemon for 3 instead of 5, it is reducing the Digivolution cost. So if you are going up against cards like Syakomon, then Syakomon does turn that off, so that is one important thing to note. But regardless, the fact that he can reduce his evolution cost, making him a really powerful and really tempo-efficient Mega, is very powerful. And then on top of which, he natively has the ability of jamming, so that's already looking to be pretty good considering how many new level 7s are entering the format. So the opponent's security is going to be a little bit scarier just because more colors have access to higher levels of Digimon. And then on top of all of that, he even has a nice when Digivolving ability where you get to unsuspend all of your Digimon with jamming. So this is really powerful of an effect because it has so much interaction and synergy with a whole bunch of cards. So if you have any extra Digimon with jamming on the field, say jamming Veemon as an example, then you get to get an extra attack with jamming Veemon, and it's just a very powerful ability because it also affects himself. So the whole big intended combo in synergy is that you're probably going to want to be utilizing Paildramon, swing with Paildramon, then Digivolve into Imperialdramon Dragon Mode, unsuspend all of your jamming Digimon, including himself. Then you're going to swing with Imperialdramon, then Paildramon's when attacking ability will go off, unsuspending him, so that way you could get a 3rd attack off of your Imperialdramon Dragon Mode, and that's just a lot of pressure onto the opponent that they might not be able to deal with, let alone block all of it. he is just looking to be a very powerful card just for that, and in the context of a raising meta, he is still very powerful because all you need is just to build up to a Paildramon in raising, and then you just move Paildramon out, Digivolve into Imperial, and combo off. So Imperialdramon is looking to be a very powerful deck still to be running in this style of meta, and as such, still why he's looking to be a very powerful deck and a very powerful card. And then the last mega of the deck, which is going to be the only level 7 of the deck, is going to be 2 copies of Omnimon. So this is the BT-05 Omnimon, and this Omnimon is absolutely insane for this deck just because of how much extra pressure he could put onto the opponent to try to help close out the game. So the first big thing to note with this Omnimon is, yes, his stats are a little bit weaker than your average Omnimon, but that's okay considering he has this nice, very powerful when digivolving ability of Blitz. So that means that he could attack even when the opponent has 1 or more memory, so that's really good considering it pairs up with his second ability, which allows you to unsuspend this Digimon, so that way you could actually attack with Blitz. So the whole intended combo with this is basically you're just going to try to combo off with Imperialdramon Dragon Mode, get your 3 attacks in, and then Digivolve up into Omnimon to get a 4th attack in. So that could be very, very powerful and very, very game-ending depending on the current state of the game and how much the opponent was able to try to deal with your initial aggression. So this is just a very good card at trying to close out the game, but if he can't close out the game, then he still has some form of protection because he has this nice ability where during all turns, if an opponent's effect would delete him or return him to the hand or deck, then we could prevent that from happening by trashing a level 6 Digimon from his Digivolution source. So this is just really powerful because if he is unable to close out the game, he at least has some form of protection to try to keep himself on the field, so that way you could try to use him again in the following turn to, again, try to help close out the game with. Next, on to our options, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Hammerspark. So Hammerspark is still just a very fantastic card just because for the low play cost of 0, you get to just gain a memory for free. So that's really good because it can extend and enhance whatever plays that you had and make new and powerful plays possible. And on top of which, it also has a very nice security ability of allowing you to gain 2 memory, which is effectively taking away 2 memory from the opponent. And that could be really brutal, either taking away their turn or limiting what they could do. And then the last option of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Cocytus Breath. So this is just the removal card slot for the deck, so it could really be anything you feel like you want to use. I just think Cocytus Breath, as of right now, is still just one of the best cards that we have, just because it generically allows us to return one of the opponent's Digimon back to their hand. So there's no level restrictions or requirements tied to it, and most of the time we're really not going to try playing it for 7, so we're just hoping it comes out of our security to act as some defense in our security, because it also has the nice security ability of activating its main, so it's just looking to be a very good card to be utilizing all around. And then the last card of the deck is going to be the only Tamer of the deck, and that is going to be 4 copies of Davis. So Davis is just an absolutely insane card for this deck to be running, first because he's the memory fixing Tamer, so if our memory is ever less than 3, he'll just always hard set it to 3, allowing our plays to be as efficient as they possibly could be, and on top of which he also has a very nice on-play ability, which helps with the deck's overall consistency because we get to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck, and then we get to add 1 blue and 1 green card among them and put it into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So at worst, this is going to be drawing you 1 card. At best, this is going to be drawing you 2 cards. So it's just helping with the overall consistency of the deck, so that way we could try to see our pieces as often as we possibly can, and that's just really good. But the big intended synergy with Davis on why we're running so much of him is also, yes, for that security ability, but because we are playing Lobomons, and he is going to be the primary card we're going to be playing with Lobomon, because Davis at the start of our turn is going to be giving us 3 memory, and we could use 2 of that 3 memory to then just Digivolve into Lobomon. So that's just really, really powerful because, again, Lobomon is in the deck to try to help close out games with. And then there's just a ton that you could do with the deck, all depending on what you want to do with it and the direction you want to take it. So I think if you're going to be using another Digitama as the 5th Digitama, Upamon is probably the best other 5th Digitama that we have access to, just because it's acting as another card draw engine for the sub-strategy of trying to have the opponent have a Digimon with no Digivolution sources in play. And then on top of that, if you want even more card draw, you could think about running the BT-01 Gabumon, just because the on-play draw card is really good, because you're guaranteed to get that card. The only downside to the card is the fact that he has 1000 DP, so he's really weak and susceptible to a lot of forms of removal. And then if you want a different type of draw engine, then you could consider using the Veemon from BT02, just because this allows you to draw a card when you unsuspend your Digimon during the main phase. So this is just, again, another way of drawing cards, because we know we're going to be unsuspending our Digimon a lot, and drawing cards is always good. Then if you want some more jamming type cards, you could consider playing Beowulfmon, just because he natively has jamming, and he has a big upside where the opponent can't attack him as long as he has a hybrid or Tamer as his inheritable source. So he's just another really obnoxious card for the opponent to try to deal with, and he's another hybrid, doubling down on some hybrid synergies. Or you could even consider playing Hexablaumon, just because Hexablaumon himself is just an absolutely insane card to be running at times. He has a very nice when attacking ability, where you get to trash up to 2 of the opponent's bottom Digivolution sources, so that's just really good at picking off abilities. And then if the opponent's Digimon has no Digivolution sources in it, then he also gains jamming, so that's really good because, again, we are a jamming focused deck, and jamming synergy is very important. So him just having jamming already makes him really good, on top of attacking the opponent's inheritable sources. And on top of all of that, he even has another ability where during all turns, your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution sources can't attack or block. So he's just really good at shutting out some of the opponent's lines of play, just because they might not be able to utilize the Digimon very meaningfully or very effectively, because they won't have any inheritable sources, and they might not be able to give them any inheritable sources or Digivolve on top of them, all depending on what they have or what they don't have. And then you still have other very powerful level 7s you could consider running. So you could consider running the BT-01 Omnimon, just because his when Digivolving ability to delete one of the opponent's Digimon and all Digimon that share the same name with it is very, very powerful still. Just because blue doesn't really have a whole lot of ways of interacting with the opponent's Digimon meaningfully, Omnimon is still just a very good card to consider for that, and on top of which, he also has a when attacking ability where you can unsuspend this Digimon by returning one of his level 6s in his inheritable source back to our hand, allowing us to reuse our Imperialdramon, and he still gets an extra attack off. So this is just very powerful, again, of a card to be running, especially with a combo play of Mega Digimon Fusion to just get a whole bunch of attacks off, then Mega Digimon Fusion into Omnimon and continue the aggression and pressure that way. And then because we do have access to X Antibody, he is just another card you could consider running, just because he's another very powerful Omnimon. He could Digivolve on top of your Omnimons for 3 instead of 6, so that's just really good, and it allows you to use your Omnimons even after their abilities are done, so he's just another very powerful card for that. And his when attacking abilities acting as some very powerful removal by deleting the opponent's Digimon that's weaker than him, and on top of all of that, he even acts as some pretty decent defense, where during the opponent's turn, this Digimon can basically turn off the attack of the opponent's Digimon by trashing 2 of his inheritable sources. So that's just really powerful. The only unfortunate thing is they do still get when attacking abilities off, but the fact that he could just act as some solid defense when you're out of blockers or don't have any blockers makes him still a very good card to consider. And then we have a new powerful removal option in the form of Absolute Blast, just because Absolute Blast costs a little bit less than Cocytus Breath, but the targets and conditions are a little bit different. The first part of the ability is you get to trash the bottom Digivolution source off of one of the opponent's Digimon, then you get to return one of the opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution sources back to the bottom of the owner's deck. So instead of bouncing it back to the hand, this is tucking it to the bottom of the deck, but they do need to not have any Digivolution sources underneath in order to be affected by Absolute Blast, which is both a good thing and a bad thing, all depending on how you build the deck. And then it has the nice security ability of activating its main ability, and that could be pretty good, again, all depending on the matchup. And then you have access to Sora and Joe. So Sora and Joe is just another really insane tamer to be considered running, just because it has the nice ability where at the start of the turn, if the opponent has no Digimon with a Digivolution source in play, then you get to gain 2 memory. And yes, this ability does stack, so the more Sora and Joes you have on the field, the more memory you'll be gaining at the start of your turn, which is very, very powerful and very, very dangerous, especially in a very aggressive style of deck like Imperialdramon. And then on top of that, it also has another ability where during your turn, when one of your blue Digimon attacks, then you get to suspend this tamer to trash 2 of the bottom Digivolution sources off of one of the opponent's Digimon. So it itself is also helping attack the opponent's Digivolution sources, so you don't really need to run many other cards that do that, and in Imperialdramon, you're not really actively looking to do that. It's just a nice upside to just try to help trigger Sora and Joe to try to gain you as much memory as possible. And then if you really wanted to, you could run Takumi. I don't think Takumi is exactly the best card to be running in this style of deck, just because it does have the ability where during all turns, all level 3 Digimon basically gain the ability of, when attacking, losing 1 memory, and we do need to aggress with some of our rookies in order to try to help win the game. But if you aren't necessarily trying to aggress with your rookies, then he's really good at helping you draw cards, because when you Digivolve your Digimon, you get to suspend this tamer to draw a card, and having extra card draw to try to help dig through your deck faster is always a good thing. So even though the deck it didn't really see much new upgrades from BT-05, what we did get from BT-05 is still very powerful and very impactful, and we still have a whole bunch of different ways that we could build the deck and take the deck into a couple different directions, all depending on what you want to play and what you're going to be utilizing. And like I said before, in the context of how the meta is going to be playing out, Imperialdramon is still just a very powerful deck, just because that the level of attacks that he can get off is still very, very high, especially if they don't have removal for a lot of your smaller bodies, so that way you could get even more attacks off of his ability just because of all of his jamming interactions, and the fact that he is playing around with jamming just makes him very, very safe to swing with. So it's just still looking to be a very powerful deck, and is still going to be a very effective deck in the BT-05 meta. So it'll be interesting to see how powerful it's still going to be going forward, let alone with any of the changes in the BT-05 metagame that's going to be happening. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.